Grunster sped through Grunt Mansion as fast as his squat, veiny legs could carry him. Running down hallway after dusty hallway, he held onto his tattered baseball cap to keep it from flying off his head. He was late for practice again! Singing, bangs, and yells came from a once shiny and pristine recording studio, now decrepit from neglect. He was really in for it this time.
Okay, Gruntmunks, this is the last goddamn time. You ready, Grin?
Yes, sir, Doc.
What about you, Gorg?
Dr. Hornsby, I've been ready to sing all day.
Don't suck up to me, pious little shithead. Where's Grunster?
Here I come, Doc.
Grunster!
Gruntmunk picnic is such fun. We eat mayonnaise in the sun. Healthy hearts all clogged with cheese.
No, Gruntmunks, that sounds like shit.
Please.
Why am I listening to this sober?
Gruntmunks, Doc isn't pleased. Not one bit. Let's give it our very best.
Grunster brings a red blanket. Grin comes with his best basket. Gorg, he tries to catch some flies for a special Gruntmunk pie.
It's all wrong, Gruntmunks. The sound is hollow, lacking. Now cut it out.
Every week, follow us and
Gruntmunks, I said
take
stop.
a peek. Gruntmunk fun, but not for you, until you're a Gruntmunk too.
You see, Grunster? Look what happened to Gorg, all because you didn't listen. Christ! I'm going to my office, and I'm locking the door.
Grunster sighed. He could never do anything right,
Grunster?
said Grin quietly, his beady eyes welling up with tears behind his inch-thick Crow-Croa bottle glasses.
What do you think is the matter with old Doc Hornsby?
Yeah,
Gurgled Gorg, nursing his swollen right eye.
it seems we can never make him happy. Not even a Gruntmunk lullaby does the trick.
Gorg anxiously tapped his claw-like toenails on the floor.
I don't know, boys.
Replied Grunster.
I'm at the end of my grunt rope.
The Gruntmunks sighed and looked at each other sadly. Aside from Doc, they were all each other had. Their entire lives were spent in the spotlight, recording pop hit after pop hit, appearing on late-night shows alongside stars like Ariana Lovato and Lil Squirty Clump. For 5 years, they fulfilled Doc's dream of creating the perfect pop group, full of the grotesquely adorable half-human, half-rodent creatures he created. Then Doc discovered the drink. The boys looked around the studio, gold records covered in cobwebs, half hanging off the walls. They knew they needed to make a change. And quick.
Before you boys came around,
said Grunster quietly,
I was oh so lonely. I never could have figured out how to fix all this by myself. Well, what did you used to do when you were sad and lonely?
asked the ever-inquisitive Grin.
Well, there wasn't much I could do,
replied Grunster.
All I could do was sit with Doc and beg him for more Gruntmunks.
Grunster suddenly perked up as it came to him.
That's it! When Doc saw I was so lonely and sad, he made you boys. Maybe, just maybe, what he needs is a new Gruntmunk,
chimed in Grin, eyes shining with delight.
But Grunster,
said chubby Gorg slowly.
how do you make a Gruntmunk?
Said Grin as he crossed his sausage-like gangly arms.
Well, I know there was a time before I was a Gruntmunk, but I don't even remember it. Do you?
He asked Grunster accusingly.
Not completely,
admitted Grunster.
But with all of our grunt heads together, I know we can find a gruntastic way to make Doc happy again.
Or sober, he thought to himself.
Let's do it,
declared Gorg in a spray of saliva.
There's no harm in trying, is there?
His dopey eyes stared longingly up at Grin. After a pause, Grin finally gave in.
Well, fine. If it'll help Doc and make us happy again, I'm all for it.
Grunster beamed.
Then to the garage. We have a Gruntmunk to make.
Gruntmunks one and Gruntmunks all. Soon we'll all be having a ball. We'll find a child and mash him up to make a young Gruntmunk pup.
10-year-old Madison sat on a park bench in the rain, head in her hands. This was the 4th time in 2 weeks her mom had forgotten to pick her up from Little League. Kicking at a rock with her big toe, she sighed and played the practice over in her head. Her coach forgot to give her a turn at bat. Then she fell in a puddle. The kids on her team laughed all the way to their parents' minivans at the end of practice. "What a loser!" someone shouted. They threw a mud ball right at her head. Her scalp was still muddy 30 minutes later. "Who needs friends anyway?" she mumbled as a tear ran down her cheek, diluted by the rainwater drenching her. Madison's head jerked up as a shabby old Ford Taurus squealed through the parking lot. It weaved narrowly between parked cars when she heard tiny yells coming from within.
There's one!
Shouted a tiny voice like someone inhaling helium. "What the?" Madison said as the car screeched to a halt directly in front of her so suddenly she thought it had hit something. Her mom always warned her not to approach a car she didn't know, but she wanted to make sure whoever was in the car was okay.
Excuse me, are you all right?"
The window slowly rolled down, and she could just barely make out 3 shrunken children's heads in the darkness. Then the door burst open, and 3 things spilled out. Madison backed away, eyes wide. What were these creatures? Their limbs were stubby and disproportionate to their slender torsos. Every inch was covered in dirty, matted rat fur, save for bald, almost human faces. They didn't have noses, and they only wore shirts. One was clearly the leader, standing in the front with his ratty baseball cap. The second was small and skinny, with giant glasses enlarging his already too big eyes. And the third was the chunkiest, most pathetic creature she'd ever seen. She was surprised he could even walk. His feet seemed to be attached directly to his pelvis.
What are you?"
she asked. The leader piped up in a charming voice.
Don't you worry, little girl. We're the Gruntmunks, and we're here to help you.
The 3 approached slowly, and Madison could see they were actually kind of cute, in a cynical way. The 3 Gruntmunks took in a deep breath.
I see that you're crying, your tears they are drying. Do you think that you need a pal? A hug round your shoulders and 3 friends to hold ya. Gruntmunks are your family now. Just climb in our Taurus, so please don't abhor us. Careful, don't make a sound. With the slam of the door and a pedal to floor, Gruntmunks are your family now.
Before Madison knew it, she was buckled into the Ford Taurus. When did this happen? She looked to the front seat and saw the Gruntmunks all piled in on the driver's side in a deranged totem pole. Gorg face down near the pedals, Grin on his back holding the bottom of the steering wheel, and Grunster on Grin's shoulders, barely peeking through the windshield. Madison wanted to pipe up about how dangerous it looked when Gorg revved the engine.
Okay, Grin,
said Grunster commandingly.
let this Taurus ride.
The car screamed down Smith Avenue, Grunster yelling commands at the 2 other Gruntmunks as they went.
Grin, go! Help me turn right! Right, I said! No, Gorg! Not the brakes! Not the brakes!
Grunster turned the wheel furiously, all 3 Gruntmunks screaming as the Taurus raced faster and faster. A woman walking her dog leapt out of the way, screaming profanities as the Gruntmunks waved to her kindly. What curious new friends, Madison thought, as they drove the wrong way down the street toward Grunt Mansion. The Gruntmunks led Madison down the front hallway of Grunt Mansion, tiptoeing so as not to wake the doc.
"What game are we playing now?"
asked Madison. She looked around and saw that Grunt Mansion was not quite as beautiful inside as it was outside. She was excited, but her belly twisted with nerves. She stopped in front of a poster in a broken frame, splashed with the words, Gruntmunk World Tour 2005, her 3 friends in a cool Charlie's Angels pose in the foreground.
"Are you guys famous?"
Madison said in awe. The grubby Gruntmunk smiled back at her, and Grunster piped up.
We were, and with you, we can be again. Come on.
Madison's anxiety disappeared, and she hurried after her friends to a dilapidated laboratory. She gasped, wide-eyed at the ancient machines and dusty instruments. She beheld a cartoonish behemoth of rusted metal taking up a whole wall, filled with knobs and bobbins and copper pipes. Inscribed at the top was a single word, Gruntmunkifier. Her eyes followed the trail of pipes, trying to visualize the process, but she could not pinpoint what exactly it did. The Gruntmunkifier ended in a huge furnace-looking masher contraption ringed with rows of metal shark teeth. She turned back to the Gruntmunks. They were hard at work.
Okay, boys, keep pouring that gasoline.
Grunster commanded.
No, Gorg. I said 3 scoops of tetrachloric acid. Keep it coming.
The machines whirred to life, emitting steam and filling the lab with mechanical bangs and clanks.
We're ready to go.
Grin piped up as he emerged from behind the giant masher, pushing his glasses back behind his lopsided ears. The 3 Gruntmunks approached Madison, who looked wary.
You want to be our friend, don't you?
Grunster asked in the most pleading voice he could.
Of course,
Madison replied.
that's all I want.
Well then, hop on in.
Encouraged Grin. He gently took her hand and led her to the Gruntmunkifier, opening a small door just big enough for Madison to fit inside.
You'll be the best Gruntmunk of all.
That was all Madison needed to hear. She couldn't give this up, not now that she finally had 3 friends who clearly loved her. She climbed into the compartment, and the 3 Gruntmunks sealed her in.
See you on the other side!
Gorg waved as the Gruntmunkization process began.
Oh, and whatever you do, don't breathe.
Gasped Madison, realizing too late what was about to happen. The Gruntmunks set to work as the Gruntmunkifier muffled Madison's horrified screams. Doc Hornsby snorted himself awake in his office, awoken by the sounds emitting from the lab.
Grunster!
He yelled. What could those Gruntmunks have gotten into this time? He stormed down the hallway into the laboratory, still bleary-eyed from drink. He stopped in his tracks. He smelled a smell he knew all too well. Slowly looking down at his feet, Doc thought he could barely make out the remnants of Crow-Croa Little League etched on a scrap of tattered uniform under his shoe. He slowly looked up again and beheld the 3 Gruntmunks, sweating but smiling.
Surprise!
The Gruntmunks squealed. Grunster approached Doc, carrying a small, grotesque bundle wrapped in a picnic blanket. He grinned as he lay the bundle at Doc's feet. Grin grinned as he adjusted his glasses on his sweaty stub of a nose. And Gorg grinned as he peered out from behind the other Gruntmunks.
Oh, dear.
Doc said quietly, sobering up as he picked up the quivering bundle.
Oh, boys. Oh, what have you done?
He unwrapped the groaning thing, now wet in his forearms. It was a Gruntmunk, or it was supposed to be. The mushed face was covered in a thin carpet of rat hair, eyes scrunched over on one cheek like a flounder. Viscous goo wept from over large pores. 4 limbs pointed out from the chest like bloody table legs.
Oh, don't you love our new Gruntmunk?
Asked Grin with a waggle of eyebrows.
Don't ya?
Oh, no. Oh, it's a nice try.
Said Doc, not wanting to upset his beloved Gruntmunks. A glimmer of the old Doc, their hero and their protector, appeared.
It's just that... Oh, you should have asked me first. The Gruntmunkization has surely... failed.
The Gruntmunks gasped as tears welled in their eyes. First Gorg, then Grin, and by the time Grunster joined, they were all wailing.
What do we do with her then?
Well, we'll have to keep her with the others.
Doc nodded at a far door. He slowly bent down and picked up the bloody bundle. He held it as if he were soothing a small baby and walked to a door in the corner of the room marked Botched Gruntmunks. The Gruntmunks stayed rooted where they were as Doc opened the door. Moans and wails poured out like a helium-flooded hell. At once, grubby, mutated arms poked out from the threshold, and Doc bat at them with his fists and shoes, screaming,
Back I say?
He threw the bundle inside and closed the door,
Boys.
he said, turning back to them.
Oh, that was an awful mistake, but I appreciate what you were trying to do.
The Gruntmunks looked up sadly, tears streaming down their cheeks. Grunster began.
We only wanted to make you happy.
Finished Grin. Doc Hornsby looked at the 3 Gruntmunks. Their dismayed rat faces were too much for him.
You have to know, boys, only I can make a Gruntmunk. I've dedicated my whole life to Gruntmunkization. It has to be me.
Grunster perked up and gasped.
Wait a minute. Gruntmunks, heads together.
He said, "Uh-oh, what did he have in mind this time?" The 3 Gruntmunks conferred in a huddle as Doc looked on, sad and confused. After much whispering, they did their famous handshake dance and turned back to Doc.
Doc,
Said Grin.
you said only you can make a Gruntmunk.
He began.
So what if?
Said Gorg.
What if you were the new Gruntmunk?
Said Grunster, cutting Gorg off and pumping his tiny fist in the air.
Boys, what are you saying?
Doc asked, horrified.
You said our sound was hollow. If we had your voice, our foursome could become a sensation.
Grunster egged on. At that, Doc brightened. He had longed for his Gruntmunks to be back in the spotlight with a new sound, not the hollow shit they had been barking out for years as he wallowed in despair.
Boys, it'll be tough. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Said Doc, pretending he hadn't already made up his mind.
Oh, Doc, please, Doc. Pretty, please.
Gorg said, taking Doc's hand in his chubby claw. A beat passed. Then Doc, apparently decided, said,
All right. I'll do it!
The Gruntmunks burst into a loud, "Hurrah!"
But listen to me very carefully. You must follow my every instruction.
The Gruntmunks nodded enthusiastically and ran off to get the Gruntmunkifier whirring again.
All right, boys.
Doc said authoritatively.
Saw me in half.
The Gruntmunks nodded and grabbed the giant saw laying next to the Gruntmunkifier. Doc lay down as each Gruntmunk grabbed part of the saw handle, each one smiling in glee. They gently moved it back and forth.
Oh, that's it, boys! Oh, that's it!
Doc encouraged. He felt every instant of agony, but he was filled with such excitement, he didn't care. The Gruntmunks began to saw more rapidly until finally Doc's body split like a bloody Easter egg. Following Doc's orders, they pushed him through the electrifier, the peeler, the drainer, the squirter, and, of course, the strainer. Doc twisted and screamed chamber after chamber until finally he reached the masher. The Gruntmunks held their breath collectively as the masher's team came down on the Doc, hearing his intermittent screams of horror and cheers of glee. Finally, ding! Rang the Gruntmunkifier, steaming from its chugging labor. Grunster approached the masher door cautiously. He had poured just the right amount of mutation serum, hadn't he? Just the right amount of grunt juice? But what if he had failed? He waited by the door, praying their old Doc had made it. The door banged open then, and the Gruntmunks coughed and choked as steam bellowed out. They held hands, each of them cold with sweat.
Doc?
Grunster questioned. After what felt like hours, Doc emerged. He was a perfect Gruntmunk. Overlong torso, stubby rat limbs, pronounced teeth, and a baseball cap with a capital letter D stitched in front. Grunster, Grin, and Gorg cheered, throwing their arms around their creation in a Gruntmunk hug. Grunt Doc beamed.
Did it work, Doc?
Grunster asked.
You tell me.
He chirped. The Gruntmunks all gasped. His helium baritone voice! It was the missing sound!
Ready, Gruntmunks?
Ready, Grunt
Doc.
Doc.
Gruntmunk picnic is such fun. We eat mayonnaise in the sun. Healthy heart